Hey everyone, Josh with Royal Treatment here. Today I'm going to tie a GT fly. I've been getting ready for an upcoming trip to Christmas Island and had some questions about how to tie this. I tied a black and purple one recently. A number of people asked about how to tie the tan one. The tan one has been a little bit harder because it's hard to get a good tan brush. I've been making my own, and that's not something that everyone's going to want to do. So this is kind of an alternative method that's kind of easy and works out pretty good. I have a couple special tools that I'm going to use. Brush, pet brush. I have a fur comb. I also put a little piece of Velcro on the back side of it so it acts as a good rake. Extra large pair of scissors because we're going to be cutting a bunch of big stuff. I use the Danville flat wax 210. This is the shrimp pink color. This hook is going to be a Gamakatsu SL12S and a 6/0. You don't have to use the 6/0 if you don't want to, but I like that large platform to tie on. I'm going to lay down a base of thread here, and I'm basically going to go to the hook point. Now I did cheat a little bit and I did prep a few of the materials ahead of time just to speed up the video. So the first part of my tail is going to be the Steve Farrar Flash Blend. This color is called Mullet. I've cut it down to about 6 inches. And if you look at my vise here, for this specific hook to this mark is 5 inches. To this outside is 6. This is going to be about 4. So I have this 6-inch piece. And what I'm going to start doing is pulling on the ends of it, and that's going to give it a little bit of a taper. And you'll see that as I just keep working it back and forth, twisting, kind of rolling it in my fingers like that, it's going to get a really nice kind of taper to it, just something like that. And this bottom leg is going to go to around that 4-inch mark. So I get a little bump of thread. I'm going to keep it right around the hook point. So kind of right in there. So again, 4, 5, 6. So maybe 4.5. I'm going to do a pinch wrap, lock it down right on top, give just a couple more wraps. And now I'm going to kind of measure the top leg and see where it's going to end up. And now we basically kind of come in at around 5 inches. So that doesn't seem too bad. Lock it down and right on top. And I'm going to lift these up so they stay kind of locked together and are just kind of one piece there. Sometimes maybe I'll take my bodkin and just run it through, help mix it up. So now you can see that tail has a nice taper to it. So tail portion number 2 is a little hunk of craft fur. And what I'm going to do is cut, this is like dirty sand, I think is what they call it, dirty tan, something like that. I'm going to cut a piece, and I'm just going to leave all that stuff. I'm going to grab that fur comb. I'm just going to pull out the bottom and maybe pull on these ends a little bit, kind of even it up. And if there's some that are really short, there you go, kind of like that. And I'll give it a couple more combs to get that, most of that under fur out. Maybe just a little, there we go, something like that. And I just keep working it till I get kind of my desired thickness. Yeah. And you can see this hunk, this little hank, is about the tail length. And so what I do is I reverse tie this in, so I turn it around. And just lay it right on top. Again, loose wrap, pinch wrap. and it's going to stay just locked right on top. Give about 3 wraps, and I'm going to look at both sides to make sure the whole thing is right on top. And then going to just give some wraps till it catches like that. There we go. So now you can see it has this real nice taper, a little bit of a hump here where the front material is tied on. Looks good. And I'm just going to kind of keep advancing the thread so I have little bits at a time here. This is Lateral Scale. This is the smaller size of it. And we're actually going to use both the larger and the smaller. And so what I'm going to do is I cut a corner here so I could pick a few strands out. And I'm looking to get 3 strands. Trim them. Now they should be nice and even. And what I'm going to do is loop them over my thread. I'm going to even them up, lock them in, then I'm just going to separate them and have them tied in on the side there. So something like that. Looks pretty nice. Now what I'm going to do is take some Zap-A-Gap, lay a little bead down, and I'm trying to get the butt ends of the craft fur and that Steve Farrar flash blend, so it kind of glues it all together, and then over those thread wraps as well. So next part of my fly is going to be the hackle tips, and I went ahead and selected a bunch ahead of time, but I want to make sure that I don't grab ones that have that nasty twist in them for tying in. I want to go through and pick some nice straight ones, and I've been doing 2 on a side, so I measured them out, and you can see when I tie them in, they're going to be longer than the tail that's already there. And I leave this fluff from the base on there. These have a little kink in them, but that's not going to matter. So go ahead, measure it out, something like that. And I'm just going to do a loose wrap and then just tie a few more wraps on there. That's nice. And leave those stems on. And I did 2 on each side. So here's another set that I picked. And measure to make sure it's lined up. Loose. Yeah, something like that. And if they're not exactly where you want, you can kind of just pull them into place and move them around a little bit. Yeah, something like that. And we're just going to keep laying down thread here. So now you have those big thick stems. We're going to trim all those off. And now just coat them all with thread. And it's okay that it's a little bit messy. We're going to keep putting materials down here to cover this all up. So next, I have a little bit of Arctic Fox, and this is kind of a washed out pink color, and I feel like it just matches really good with this, the tones of this fly. So I'm going to get a little bit of a hank here. Now you could use any color you want, tan, white. I don't know that I would do bright pink, but just something that kind of fits in with this tone. Get a little hank, trim it as short as possible, or as close to the leather as possible. Now I'm going to take this Velcro piece, and you can see when I just hit it with the Velcro, it's going to pull out all that under fur and get us just the long material that we want to work with. Yeah, like that. And maybe I get a couple more. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's nice. So what I'm going to do is I want this to end up long as possible. And I'm going to slightly advance my thread. So I'm kind of lengthening the body here slowly. So maybe something like that. Give a couple wraps, and you can see it's sitting on top. And I'm just going to maneuver it around. And it doesn't have to go all the way around, but we want some pretty good coverage here. Maybe even pull it back, lengthen it again. Yeah, maybe like that. Looks pretty good. Yeah, I think that's pretty nice. And then take your brush. You can kind of get a little bit better feel for what it's going to look like. Yeah, that seems pretty nice. Good. And give these last little butts a little trim. Yeah, nice. Okay, that looks good. Now we're going to add the actual lateral line. This is that same lateral scale, but this is the full size version, a little bit thicker. Again, I just cut one strand. I'm going to fold it in half. I'm going to line up the ends, and then I'm just going to lock it down right on top. Just keep tying it, and then once I have a few thread wraps to lock it into place, I'll pull it down along the sides, and then just get it right kind of where I want it. And if it's not exactly right, just pull it into place. So like that. This fly is coming together pretty nice. Pick this out a little bit. Okay, now a little more zap-a-gap. Okay, now if we are tying a brush fly, or if we're using a brush like some kind of craft fur brush, this is when we would take and tie this in. So something like that. What I'm going to do is just slightly different. I'm going to take my craft fur patch, and I'm just going to start cutting off hanks of it and kind of hollow tie them in. So what I'll do is cut a piece like yay, take my comb out that under fur, do that like twice, yeah, like that maybe. Then I'm going to take these tips and I'm going to manually line them up. So just pull them, even them, till I feel like I have a nice even hank here, something like that. So now we're going to tie these in, and what we're going to do, move this thread back here a little bit. We're going to take and trim a little bit of this. Now we have a nice piece. Turn it around. This will make a lot more sense here in a sec. And now what we're trying to do is basically wrap this on all the way around. Something like that. And then take this and just fold it back. So now it has essentially complete coverage. And it's okay if it's not perfect. We're going to do a couple of these. And you can see what we're doing here is not wrapping on top, but in front. So it kind of is blocking it, forcing it down. Yeah, something like that. So there's one. We'll get another hank about the same size. And I'm trying to cut this as close to the base of that piece of craft fur as I can. So give it my little comb out. Then I'll try to pull out that kind of middle longer stuff. Then you can see there's a couple lengths here. I will just take and pull. There it is. Line those up. Check it. And if there's a bunch more like that, yeah, there we go. That looks pretty good. Now this one, I'm just going to leave those little bit longer pieces. We're not going to even this one up, but turn it around. Lay it on top here. Yeah, maybe somewhere like that. And just make sure you spin it all the way around. So like that. Give it a little check to make sure it's pretty evenly dispersed. Fold it back. And you can see now we're building up this nice body. Yeah, nice. That looks great. Okay, one last little one. And if you're doing this like this, you can always do, if you were doing a black and purple one, you could do kind of black on top, purple on the bottom, and you could make it two-tone pretty easy. So pull out the underfur. Grab these tips so you can align them. So we're basically just stacking them by hand. Yeah, something like that looks pretty good. Turn it around. And this one's gonna just go right in here. Couple wraps, make sure you have it pretty well covered. And it looks like the bottom's not all that well covered. So I'll back it off just a little bit. I'm gonna just start aligning. Yeah, something just like that. Okay, so last one. So again, just take and push all these back. And just finish it off nice and neat. That looks pretty nice, I think. That looks great. So whip finish, and I like to do maybe 2-3 turn whip finishes, something like that. And you can see I'm using my whole hand to grab all that material out of the way. So something like that. That looks good. Now I'm going to coat this head with the Solarez Bone Dry. This will be a nice hard finish. The bone dry is super thin, penetrates well, isn't tacky, will just have a really nice finish. So like that. Yeah, that fly is looking really good. Now I'll take and just brush this out a little bit. And you can see based on my tape, 4, 5, 6, so I have about 5.5 inch fly. With these strung saddle hackles, it's really hard to get one much longer than that 5.5 mark, I think. You saw that we didn't even pull any material off or whatever. We had them scooted all the way to the back, and that's basically about as much as we could get. So you could easily leave this the way it is, or you can add some eyes if you want. Of course, I'm going to put eyes on mine. So I use this, there's any number of things, but E6000, this stuff is really, really good. And I like to get 2 bodkins to do this move. one that's going to have the E6000 on it and one that's not. 10 millimeter living eye. I'm going to pop both of those off and lay them right here on my paper towel. Open up that E6000. And what I like to do is kind of align this stuff, kind of pull it up. I'm going to get the E6000 on and I'm going to kind of slide it through so it's all the way through here. So I kind of have almost a barbell shape. It'll make sense when you see. And what I'm trying to do is get it on as much material as possible and have really good penetration. So pull it up a little bit. You can see I got a pretty good glob on there, but you got to be careful with this stuff. It has a tendency to get everywhere. So something like that. And I'm doing it on top of that shank. So now it's all the way inside there. I'll do one from the other side. This is also going to kind of help me have a guide for where I'm trying to lock everything in. But it's going to have enough glue that I have glue on both sides. And this stuff, like I said, is really runny and messy, so be careful when you're doing it. It just has a tendency to get everywhere. So make sure that you don't have a bunch of little strings dangling off. So there's one. Now I just lay some right on top. Like that. A little bit more on the other side. Okay, there we go. And I'm just gonna, right there. And I try to wipe as much of this off of my bodkin as I can while I'm going. Other bodkin. So now I have those two eyes. They're laying sticky side up. So I just grab it. And now I'm not touching anything but the fly. And there's no glue on that bodkin. So it makes it really easy to set it where I want it. Like I said, I stuck that bodkin with the glue all the way through. So now I kind of have a guide of where these eyes are supposed to be, right? So I have that whole dot space. There we go. And I'll keep fidgeting with these as they're drying. Make sure they are nice and even. And if I feel like they need a little more help after this is done and they've dried, I can put a little UV resin in. I'll just kind of keep playing with them like that. Yeah, that looks great. And you can see now that I pinched those eyes on, the fly becomes a little bit taller. That pink inside, I know it seems weird to put the pink in, but it is more of a little accent now. And this fly came together pretty good. I think if you wanted to thin out that craft fur that we reverse tied in or hollow tied in, you could give it a little sleeker profile. The nice thing with the way that we tied it with the craft fur is that the body is thin and more tall. With the brush, it's going to be more round even when you close it up. So this will give a little bit better fishing profile, I think. And I think also what you get with it like this is you get a little better, easier to cast because it has less materials on it. But this is a nice alternative if you can't find the brushes or you don't want to take the time to build your own. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you get to fish it, and I hope it works for you. Thanks.